I'm Harley, 32 years old, and perpetually solving other people's problems, especially at my software engineering job, which made me late to my parents' 30th anniversary dinner. When I finally arrived, everyone had finished eating. Mom slid a $1,500 bill across the table with a smile. My sister Amanda smirked, "You're our ATM," as everyone laughed. I stared at their expectant faces, tore the bill into pieces, and walked out. 3 months later, I discovered what family really means. Before I continue, where are you watching from? Hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to stand up to family that took advantage of you. Growing up as the eldest child in our household meant responsibility was thrust upon me early. I was raised in a modest middle-class neighborhood in Seattle, where our single-story home constantly needed repairs. My father would attempt himself to save money. The sound of his toolbox opening on weekends became the soundtrack of my childhood, along with my mother's worried sighs when bills arrived. I was the first in my family to attend college, having secured a partial scholarship to Washington State for computer science. My parents were proud but clueless about what I actually studied. My father, Robert, would tell neighbors I was doing something with computers, while my mother, Diane, would simply say I was smart with numbers. Their vague understanding of my career path would later contribute to their assumption that my success equated to unlimited financial resources. My father worked construction until a back injury in my sophomore year of college limited his abilities. He still works in the industry, but with reduced hours and constant pain he pretends doesn't bother him. My mother has worked as a part-time receptionist at a dental office for over 20 years, where the primary benefit is free dental work for the family. Money was always tight, but they managed to keep us fed and housed, if not much else. My sister Amanda is 28 and has never found her thing. She started community college 3 separate times, switching from nursing to business to education before dropping out entirely. She now works at a clothing boutique in the mall where she gets a discount that enables her to dress far better than her income should allow. Amanda lives in a 1-bedroom apartment. She can barely afford, drives a leased car that exceeds her budget, and somehow always has the latest iPhone. Then there's my younger brother Kevin, 24, and still finding himself. Kevin has attempted careers as a musician, personal trainer, bartender, and most recently social media influencer. None have panned out. He lives in my parents' basement, promising each new venture will be his breakthrough. He's charming and well-liked, which makes it hard to stay frustrated with him, but his financial irresponsibility is staggering. The pattern of my family using me as financial support began during my senior year of college, when I secured an internship that paid surprisingly well. At first it was small requests. Dad needed help with the electricity bill during a particularly cold winter. Mom's car required unexpected repairs. Amanda needed textbooks for a semester she would later abandon. After graduation, I landed a position at a growing tech company with a starting salary that made my parents' eyes widen. The requests grew more substantial. $2,000 for Amanda's security deposit on her apartment, $1,500 to get Kevin's car out of impound after multiple unpaid parking tickets, $3,000 toward my parents' roof replacement when insurance wouldn't cover the full amount. Each time I told myself it was temporary. Each time I transferred the money with a growing knot in my stomach. Each time the gratitude seemed to diminish while the expectation grew. My apartment in downtown Seattle became a symbol of my excess to my family. It wasn't extravagant, a 1-bedroom with a decent view, but my mother would make comments like, "Must be nice to have all that space to yourself when your father and I are still in the same house where we raised 3 kids." My career advanced steadily. I became a senior developer, then a team lead. I worked 60-hour weeks, solved complex problems, and built systems used by millions of people. When I tried explaining my work accomplishments at family gatherings, eyes would glaze over until someone changed the subject, usually to someone else's problems that coincidentally could be solved with money. The emotional distance between us grew proportionally to my income. Sunday dinners became strategy sessions where family members would casually mention financial challenges while passing the potatoes. Holiday gifts from them grew smaller, while expectations of what I would give increased. Birthday cards from my parents always included hints about bills they were struggling with rather than genuine messages. I maintained my own apartment as a sanctuary 20 miles from my childhood home, close enough to visit but far enough to separate my life from theirs. The geographic distance was manageable. The emotional gulf was becoming unbridgeable. Still, I showed up for every family event, birthday, and holiday, carrying the weight of unspoken expectations along with whatever gift or dish I was supposed to bring. By the time my parents' 30th anniversary approached, I had been serving as the family bank for nearly a decade. I had helped Amanda with 6 months of rent, during a period of unemployment paid for Kevin's certification in 3 different careers that went nowhere, and covered my parents' property taxes twice. The resentment had built up like plaque in an artery slowly imperceptibly, until the flow of genuine connection was nearly blocked completely. Yet I still said yes, when my mother called to say they wanted to celebrate their anniversary at Bellini's, the most expensive Italian restaurant in Seattle. "Your father and I never get to enjoy nice things," she said, her voice practiced in the particular tone that made refusal seem cruel. "It would mean so much if you could treat us to a special night." I agreed, not knowing that night would finally force me to confront the unhealthy dynamics that had controlled my adult life for far too long. The day of my parents' anniversary started like many others with a crisis at work. We were launching a new feature for our biggest client, and the production environment was experiencing unexplained outages. As the team lead, I couldn't simply walk away, even though I had requested the afternoon off weeks in advance. "I'm going to be late." I texted my mother at 4:30, already 30 minutes past when I should have left the office. "System emergency. Save me a seat." Her response was immediate. "Everyone's already here. We made reservations for 6 o'clock sharp. Don't ruin this special day." The guilt trip was familiar territory, but I pushed it aside and focused on the code. By 5:45, we had identified the bug, a memory leak in a third-party API we were using. I delegated the fix to 2 capable developers, and finally left my dress shirt wrinkled from the long day, and my tie hastily straightened in the elevator mirror. Traffic was merciless. Seattle's notorious rush hour held me hostage as I watched the clock tick past 6, then 6:15, then 6:30. My phone buzzed repeatedly with updates from my family. "Mom, 6:05 p.m. Where are you? Everyone is waiting. Dad, 6:12 p.m. Your mother is upset. Hurry up. Amanda, 6:20 p.m. Way to ruin their anniversary. We're ordering without you. Kevin, 6:25 p.m. Dude, Mom's on her second glass of wine already. It's getting tense here." I finally arrived at Bellini's at 7:08, rushing through the ornate entrance into the dimly lit interior. The restaurant exuded old-world Italian luxury with its dark mahogany furnishings, white tablecloths, and waitstaff in formal attire. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over diners enjoying multi-course meals with wine pairings that cost more than most people's daily wages. Bellini's was my parents' favorite restaurant, a place they would never visit unless someone else was paying. They had been there exactly twice before, when I got my first major promotion, and when I received a significant performance bonus last year. Both times I had paid without complaint. I spotted my family at a large round table in the center of the main dining room. As I approached, I noticed everyone's plates were nearly empty. Dessert plates with remnants of tiramisu and panna cotta sat before them. Multiple empty wine bottles stood like sentinels in the center of the table. "Here he is," my father announced, his voice slightly louder than appropriate for the setting. He wasn't a big drinker, but the flush in his cheeks suggested he had indulged in the wine. My mother didn't stand to greet me. Her lips were pressed into a thin line as she checked her watch dramatically. "Only an hour and 8 minutes late. I suppose we should be grateful you made it at all." "I'm sorry," I said, taking the one empty seat. "Work emergency. I came as soon as I could." "Of course," Amanda said, twirling the stem of her wine glass. "Your job is always more important than family." I noticed her new bracelet catching the light, something designer, and well beyond her retail salary. Kevin sat slumped in his chair, scrolling through his phone, occasionally glancing up with a half-smile that suggested he was enjoying the tension. "We took the liberty of ordering for you," my mother said, gesturing to a covered plate in front of me. "It's probably cold by now." Before I could respond, a waiter appeared at my shoulder. "Would Sir like me to reheat his osso buco?" he asked with professional courtesy. "No thank you," I replied. "It's fine as is." As the waiter nodded and retreated, my mother's hand emerged with a leather folio. "Since you missed most of the celebration, the least you can do is take care of this." She slid the bill across the table toward me. I opened it slowly, expecting a significant amount. What I saw made my stomach drop. $1,547. The itemized list included multiple bottles of Barolo Reserve wine at $200 each, premium antipasto platters, the most expensive entrees on the menu, and every dessert option available. "We decided to go all out," my father said, not quite meeting my eyes. "30th anniversary only comes once." "You're always saying we should enjoy life more," my mother added, as if she was doing me a favor by spending my money. I sat in stunned silence, processing not just the amount, but the entitlement behind it. They hadn't even waited for me before ordering the most expensive items possible, knowing I wouldn't be there to object. It was a calculated move. "What's wrong?" Amanda asked with false concern. "That's nothing for you, right? Probably what you spend on your fancy coffee each month." "Yeah, bro," Kevin chimed in. "Spread the wealth a little." "After all," Amanda continued, her voice taking on the mocking tone she'd perfected, "since childhood you're our ATM." Everyone laughed. My mother's tight smile relaxed as she joined in. My father's uncomfortable chuckle. Kevin's outright guffaw. Even my aunt and uncle, who had been quiet during my arrival, snickered along with the joke at my expense. The waiter stood awkwardly nearby, witnessing this family dynamic, with professional detachment but unmistakable discomfort. In that moment, something crystallized in me. Years of resentment, of biting my tongue, of writing checks to solve problems that weren't mine. It all converged into perfect clarity. I wasn't helping my family. I was enabling a toxic pattern that was destroying our relationship and preventing them from taking responsibility for their own lives. I looked at the bill again then, at each family member's face. No one seemed concerned about my feelings. No one had even asked about the work emergency that had made me late. I was just the wallet at the table. With deliberate calmness, I picked up the bill and tore it in half, then quarters, then eighths. The laughter stopped immediately. "What are you doing?" my mother hissed, her eyes darting around to see if other diners were watching. I placed the fragments neatly in the center of the table. "I'm done," I said quietly. Done with what my father asked confusion, replacing his celebratory mood. Done being used. I stood up, placed 5 $20 bills on the table, enough to cover my untouched meal and tip. "I love you all, but this isn't love. This is exploitation. I won't be participating anymore." "You can't be serious," my mother said, her voice rising. "After everything we've done for you." "Harley, sit down," my father said sternly. "You're making a scene." Amanda's face had transformed from mocking to furious. "So what, you're too good for us now, just because you make a little money?" Kevin just stared, his phone forgotten in his hand. "I'm not too good for anyone," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "But I'm worth more than being your personal bank. You didn't even wait for me before spending my money without asking. That says everything." I turned and walked toward the exit, my heart pounding but my stride purposeful. Behind me I heard my mother's indignant protests, my father calling my name, and Amanda's cutting remark, "Just wait until he needs something from us." The cool evening air hit my face as I pushed through the restaurant doors. I made it to my car before the adrenaline began to fade, leaving me shaking slightly as I gripped the steering wheel. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and racing thoughts. My phone buzzed repeatedly in my pocket, but I ignored it. For the first time in years, I felt simultaneously terrible and liberated. The weight of expected financial support had been lifted, but in its place was the sick feeling that I might have just lost my family entirely. When I finally reached my apartment, I turned my phone off completely and sat in darkness on my balcony, watching the Seattle skyline and wondering if I had done the right thing or made the biggest mistake of my life. The morning after the restaurant incident, I woke to 37 missed calls, 22 text messages, and 15 emails from various family members. I scrolled through them while drinking my coffee, the Seattle rain pattering against my windows, providing a fitting soundtrack to the storm of family drama. My mother's messages progressed from indignant, "I can't believe you would embarrass us like that," to guilt-inducing. "After all we sacrificed for you," to outright manipulative, "Your father is so upset, his blood pressure is dangerously high." Each text was designed to hit my emotional weak points with surgical precision. My father, who rarely sent messages longer than a few words, had left a 2-minute voicemail that started reasonably but gradually transformed into a lecture about respect and family obligation. "We gave you everything growing up." His voice cracked slightly. "We went without so you could have opportunities. And this is how you repay us, by humiliating your mother on our anniversary." Amanda had taken a different approach. Her Instagram story featured a vague post about toxic family members who think they're better than everyone else once they get a little success. She hadn't named me, but the timing made it obvious who she meant. Her direct messages were less subtle. "Hope your fancy job keeps you warm at night since you clearly don't need family anymore." Kevin's texts were the most conflicted. "Mom's freaking out," followed by, "That was pretty harsh, bro, but then I kind of get it though. They put a lot on you." His messages revealed the cracks in the family's united front against me. Then came the extended family involvement. My Aunt Judith, my mother's sister, called to talk some sense into me. "Family supports each other, Harley," she lectured. "Your parents won't be around forever. Is this how you want to remember treating them?" My Uncle Stephen sent an email with the subject line, "MAN up," that contained a lengthy diatribe about generational responsibility and how in my day we respected our parents no matter what. The collective message was clear: I was in the wrong. I was selfish. I was abandoning my family when they needed me. Not once did anyone acknowledge that the $1,500 dinner without my consent might have been inappropriate. After reading everything, I made a decision that surprised even me. I would not respond immediately. Instead, I set my phone to Do Not Disturb, allowing only work calls to come through, and focused on the software release that had been interrupted by the anniversary dinner. Work became my sanctuary. I threw myself into coding, testing, and documentation with an intensity that impressed even my productivity-obsessed manager. "Whatever's driving you, Harley, keep it up," she said after I fixed a particularly troublesome bug that had plagued the team for weeks. The only person outside work I communicated with was my best friend Tyler. We had been friends since college, but our relationship had become more distant as my family obligations consumed more of my time and energy. When I finally called him a week after the restaurant incident, his immediate response wasn't what I expected. "Honestly, I'm proud of you," Tyler said when I finished recounting what had happened. "I've watched them take advantage of you for years, man." "You have?" I was genuinely surprised. "Everyone has. Remember when you couldn't come on that hiking trip to Mount Rainier because your sister needed money for rent? Or when you had to cancel our tickets to the Seahawks game because your parents suddenly needed a new water heater? You've been canceling your life to fund theirs for as long as I've known you." It was the first time I had told someone the full extent of the financial manipulation, and hearing Tyler's perspective was like having a fog lifted. What I had normalized over years wasn't normal at all. Last Christmas, I recalled slowly, I spent $3,000 on gifts for my family. Know what I got? A $20 gift card to Starbucks from my parents. Nothing from Kevin, and a used book from Amanda that still had a library sticker on it. Tyler's laugh held no humor. "And you thought that was okay because they don't have what I have," I answered automatically, then paused as I heard the conditioning in my own voice. "At least that's what they always told me." That conversation sparked a painful re-examination of my family relationships. I began keeping a journal of financial requests over the years, documenting the patterns of manipulation. There was always an emergency, always a reason why this request was different from the last one, always the implication that saying no meant I didn't truly love them. 2 weeks after the restaurant incident, my mother attempted reconciliation. Her text message started with something resembling an apology. We may have overstepped with the anniversary dinner. But it quickly pivoted. Your father needs dental work that insurance won't cover. $2,000. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. For the first time, I replied with a simple "I'm sorry, but I can't help with that." No explanation, no justification, no opening for negotiation. Her response was immediate and explosive. I never thought my own son would turn his back on his father's health. I guess money has changed you after all. I didn't take the bait. Instead, I blocked her number for 72 hours to give myself space to process without additional guilt trips. When I unblocked her, there were no new messages. The silence was both a relief and unsettling. 3 days later, the escalation reached a new level. I was in a meeting with my development team when my assistant buzzed to say my family was in the lobby. All of them, mother, father, sister, and brother, had shown up at my workplace unannounced. "Tell them I'm in a meeting and can't be disturbed," I instructed, my heart racing. 5 minutes later, raised voices could be heard from the reception area. My mother was demanding to see me, insisting it was a family emergency. My assistant, looking uncomfortable, slipped into the conference room. "I'm sorry, Harley, but your mother is causing a scene. Security is asking if they should escort them out." The meeting had stopped entirely, all eyes on me. These were colleagues who respected me professionally but knew nothing about my personal life. Now my family drama was spilling into my career sanctuary. "I'll handle it," I said, excusing myself from the meeting. In the lobby, my mother stood with her arms crossed, my father looking embarrassed beside her. Amanda was filming with her phone, presumably for social media ammunition, while Kevin hung back, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. "What are you doing here?" I asked, quietly aware of the receptionist and security guard watching intently. "You left us no choice," my mother said loudly. "You won't answer calls. You won't help your own father get necessary medical care. What kind of son does that?" "This is not the place," I said firmly. "I'm at work." "Oh, your precious job," Amanda interjected. "More important than family, right?" Several coworkers had stopped in the hallway, pretending to look at their phones while obviously listening. "Either we talk privately in a conference room, or I'm going to have security escort you out," I said, my professional reputation hanging by a thread. They followed me to a small meeting room where the true purpose of their visit became clear. There was no dental emergency. They had come with a typed repayment plan for me to sign, outlining my family financial obligations, including monthly stipends for my parents and siblings. "This is a joke, right?" I asked, scanning the document that effectively made me responsible for supporting 4 adults indefinitely. "This is what family does," my mother insisted. "We're just formalizing what you should be doing anyway." The audacity was breathtaking. In my workplace during business hours, they had staged this intervention to regain financial control over me. "The answer is no," I said, sliding the paper back across the table. "And if you ever come to my workplace again, I will get a restraining order." The threat, the first time I had ever taken such a hard stance, shocked them into momentary silence. "You don't mean that?" my father finally said, his voice small. "I do," I replied, standing up. "I love you all, but this behavior has to stop. I'm not your bank. I'm your son and brother, and right now you're not treating me like either." I walked them to the elevator, enduring my mother's tearful accusations and Amanda's cold glare. Kevin hung back as the others entered the elevator. "I told them this was a bad idea," he murmured. "Sorry, man." It was the first genuine moment in weeks, but before I could respond, he stepped into the elevator with the others and the doors closed on their angry, hurt faces. I returned to my team meeting with shaking hands and a professional smile plastered on my face, pretending that my world wasn't crumbling just beneath the surface. For the next 3 weeks, my family maintained complete radio silence. No calls, no texts, no social media posts, no workplace ambushes. Initially, the quiet brought relief, a chance to breathe without bracing for the next financial request or emotional manipulation. But as days passed, silence transformed into a different kind of burden. During quiet moments, making dinner in my empty apartment, driving home from work, with only the radio for company, waking up on Sunday mornings with nowhere to go. Doubt crept in. Had I overreacted? Was I throwing away my family over money? Memories surfaced at unexpected times. My father teaching me to ride a bike. My mother nursing me through a high school bout of pneumonia. Amanda and I building elaborate snow forts during Seattle's rare, heavy snowfalls. Kevin looking up to me when he was small before resentment complicated our relationship. My 33rd birthday came and went without acknowledgement from my family. No off-key phone rendition of happy birthday from my mother. No awkward but well-meaning card from my father. No inside joke text from Kevin. I told myself it didn't matter, but the absence left a hollow feeling I couldn't shake. Sleep became elusive. I would lie awake, replaying the restaurant scene, imagining alternative endings where I paid the bill quietly and preserved the peace, or where I expressed my feelings more diplomatically, or where my family recognized their behavior and apologized sincerely. None of these fantasies changed my waking reality. My work performance, which had initially improved through focused distraction, began to suffer. I missed deadlines, overlooked bugs, and zoned out during important meetings. My boss, Monica, who had always valued my reliability, called me into her office after I submitted code with a critical error that another team member had to fix. "What's going on with you, Harley?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "This isn't like you. Just some personal stuff," I replied vaguely. "I'll get it together." "Whatever it is, deal with it or get help," she said not unkindly. "You're too valuable to the team to burn out." Her words echoed as I sat alone in my apartment that evening, staring at takeout I had no appetite for. Was I burning out? The emotional toll of standing up to my family had been far greater than I anticipated. I had gained financial boundaries, but lost the only people who had been constants in my life, flawed as our relationship was. The rock-bottom moment came unexpectedly on a rainy Tuesday evening. A knock at my door revealed my brother Kevin standing in the hallway, soaking wet and looking miserable. "Can I come in?" he asked, water dripping from his jacket onto the carpet. I hesitated, then stepped aside. Kevin had always been the least aggressive in financial matters, more follower than instigator in family schemes. "Mom doesn't know I'm here," he said, immediately accepting the towel I offered. "She'd kill me if she knew." "Why are you here then?" I asked, keeping my distance emotionally and physically. Kevin sank onto my couch, looking younger and more vulnerable than his 24 years. "Things are bad, Harley. Really bad." "What do you mean?" "After you cut them off, Mom and Dad are in serious financial trouble. They might lose the house." His eyes, so similar to mine, pleaded for understanding. "The bank called about missed mortgage payments. Dad's back is worse, and he can't work extra shifts anymore. Amanda's car got repossessed last week." The familiar weight of responsibility pressed down on me. "I'm sorry to hear that, but—" "I know what you're going to say," Kevin interrupted. "That it's not your problem. But these are our parents, man. They raised us. Can you really let them lose everything?" His words hit their target with precision. Could I? Could I really stand by while my family suffered financial catastrophe? The resolve I had built over weeks began to crumble. "How much do they need?" I heard myself asking. Kevin looked relieved. $8,000 would cover the mortgage back payments and Dad's medical bills. My hand actually moved toward my phone, ready to transfer the money, when Kevin added, "Mom said this would work. She said you wouldn't let Dad suffer." The words struck like a slap. Mom said this would work. Kevin's expression changed as he realized his slip. "I didn't mean—" "This is another manipulation," I said slowly, the truth dawning. "There's no mortgage crisis, is there?" His silence was confirmation enough. "Tell me the truth, Kevin. Now." He crumbled under direct confrontation, a quality that had made him a poor liar since childhood. "The house is fine," he admitted quietly. "Mom and Dad are keeping up with bills. It's not as dire as I made it sound." "Then why come here with this story? Why lie to my face?" Kevin looked genuinely conflicted. "They're not okay with you standing up for yourself, Harley. It's never been about the money, not really. It's about control. When you tore up that bill, you took away their power over you. They can't handle it. The honesty was unexpected and strangely touching. And you, what do you think? He shrugged, a gesture reminiscent of his teenage years. I think they've been using you for years. I think Amanda is jealous of your success. I think Mom and Dad are stuck in a mindset where children owe parents everything. Then why participate in this scheme? Because they're all I have, he said simply. I live in their house. I eat their food. I don't have what you have: independence, a career, your own place. I can't stand up to them like you did. His admission created the first genuine connection we'd had in years. I get that, I said. But Kevin, don't you see that they're keeping you dependent? As long as you live there and go along with how they treat me, you'll never build your own life. Maybe, he acknowledged. Sometimes I envy you, you know. Not just the money, the strength to say no to them. We talked for nearly 2 hours, peeling back layers of family dynamics neither of us had fully acknowledged before. Kevin revealed that our parents had retirement savings they never mentioned when asking me for money. Amanda had received financial help from her boyfriend, but presented herself as struggling to maintain access to my support. The family narrative of perpetual crisis was largely manufactured. When Kevin finally left, he paused at the door. They'll be furious I told you all this. I should probably start looking for my own place. You could stay here until you find something, I offered, surprising myself. He shook his head. I need to do this on my own. Like you said, independence. A faint smile. But thanks, big brother. After he left, the weight of everything hit me at once. I had been manipulated my entire adult life by the people who should have been most honest with me. The realization that even Kevin's visit had started as part of a scheme broke something inside me. I sank to the floor of my living room and did something I hadn't done since my grandfather's funeral when I was 16. I sobbed. Uncontrollable, body-shaking sobs that released years of suppressed hurt, anger, and betrayal. I cried for the relationship I wished I had with my family, for the money I had given at the expense of my own dreams, for the boundaries I had failed to establish for so long. That night, alone in my apartment, I hit emotional rock bottom. I had stood up to my family, but lost them in the process. I had gained clarity but felt more confused than ever about how to move forward. I had done the right thing but felt worse than I had in years. As I finally dragged myself to bed in the early morning hours, I made a decision: I needed help navigating this terrain. For the first time in my life, I would seek professional guidance rather than trying to solve everything myself, a pattern I had ironically learned from being my family's perpetual problem solver. The morning after Kevin's visit, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Then I spent 2 hours researching therapists who specialized in family dynamics. By noon, I had scheduled an appointment with Dr. Eleanor Winters, a psychologist, whose profile mentioned expertise in financial abuse within families, a term I had never encountered but that resonated deeply. 3 days later, I sat in Dr. Winters' comfortably appointed office, nervously recounting the anniversary dinner incident and its aftermath. I expected judgment or skepticism, but instead found validation. What you're describing, Harley, is a classic pattern of financial exploitation, she explained. Family members using emotional leverage to extract material resources is actually a recognized form of abuse, especially when it becomes systematic. Abuse seems like a strong word, I replied uncomfortably. They're not bad people. Abuse describes behaviors, not character, she clarified. Good people can engage in harmful patterns, often without fully recognizing the damage they're causing. Over the next hour, Dr. Winters helped me identify the manipulation tactics my family had employed: guilt induction, obligation, enforcement, emotional blackmail, and what she called moving goalposts, the way each financial contribution was quickly forgotten and replaced with new demands. Your homework this week, she said as our session ended, is to make a comprehensive list of all financial requests your family has made over the past 5 years. Include the stated reason amount, whether you complied, and any patterns you notice. The assignment proved more revealing than I anticipated. Scrolling through bank statements, text messages, and emails, I documented over 70 separate financial requests totaling nearly $83,000. The patterns were unmistakable requests, increased after every promotion or raise I received. Emergencies mysteriously coincided with vacations or major purchases I mentioned. Repayment promises were made and uniformly broken. In our second session, Dr. Winters suggested I consult a financial advisor to understand how these contributions had impacted my financial future. The meeting with Janet Kim, a certified financial planner, brought another sobering realization. Based on what you've shared, Janet explained, displaying charts on her tablet, the money you've given your family has delayed your retirement savings by approximately 7 years. It's also prevented you from building the down payment for a home which you mentioned was a goal. 7 years, I repeated, stunned. Compound interest works in both directions, she replied. Money given away isn't just that sum, it's all the growth that sum would have generated over time. Janet helped me develop a financial recovery plan that included accelerated retirement contributions and a structured savings approach for a future home purchase. More importantly, she helped me establish clear boundaries for any future family financial involvement. If you decide to help family in the future, she advised it should be planned, budgeted, and given without compromising your financial health. Gifts, not obligations. Armed with both psychological insight and financial clarity, I returned to Dr. Winters' office with a newfound sense of purpose. Over the next 2 months, we worked through exercises that helped me untangle love from financial support, identify healthy versus unhealthy giving, and recognize the difference between generosity and exploitation. A particularly powerful session involved writing letters never to be sent to each family member expressing the hurt and anger I had suppressed for years. The exercise released emotions I hadn't fully acknowledged even to myself. "Dear Mom," my letter began, "every time you call me your successful son, I hear pride in your voice. But when that pride is immediately followed by a request for money, I wonder if my value to you is measured only in dollars." Writing these letters proved cathartic, releasing years of resentment and clarifying my own boundaries. After completing them, Dr. Winters guided me through burning them in a small ceremonial bowl in her office, a symbolic release of expectations that others would understand my perspective. "Healing doesn't require their acknowledgement or approval," she explained as we watched the papers curl and blacken. "It requires your commitment to your own well-being." As my emotional health improved, I began reconnecting with friends I had neglected during years of family obligation. Tyler and I resumed our weekend hiking trips. I joined a recreational basketball league with co-workers, discovering physical activity helped manage the anxiety that still occasionally surfaced when thinking about my family. A photography class I had always wanted to take, but had never found the time for, became a Saturday morning ritual. Through the camera lens, I rediscovered joy in observing the world around me rather than focusing exclusively on others' problems. Work performance rebounded as my mental clarity returned. My boss, Monica, noticed the change, commenting, "Whatever you've been doing, keep it up. Your old spark is back." 2 weeks later, she recommended me for promotion to senior developer with a significant salary increase. The promotion brought an interesting test of my new boundaries. My first impulse was to call my parents and share the news, and then brace for the inevitable financial request that would follow. Instead, I celebrated with friends who expressed genuine happiness for my success without any underlying agenda. With my first enhanced paycheck, I made a decision that would have been unthinkable months earlier. I bought myself something significant without guilt. Not an extravagance, but a reliable new car to replace my aging sedan with 200,000 miles on the odometer. As I drove it off the lot, I realized it was perhaps the first major purchase I had made solely for myself in my adult life. The lack of contact from my family continued, but its emotional impact diminished as I built a fuller life. Dr. Winters helped me understand that their silence was likely a continued attempt at manipulation, what she called the silent treatment designed to make me cave to restore the relationship on their terms. Real reconciliation, she explained, would involve acknowledgement of the unhealthy patterns and a commitment to change. Without that, resuming contact often means resuming the same dynamics. 6 weeks into therapy, I had a breakthrough realization. I had been defining love as sacrifice and suffering. If I wasn't giving until it hurt, I wasn't showing love properly. This distorted definition had roots in childhood observations of my parents' relationship with each other, and with money, their constant financial stress and martyrdom about providing for the family. You can redefine love, Dr. Winters suggested. What if love meant wanting the best for each other, including independence and growth? What if it meant healthy interdependence, rather than exploitation or dependence? The question lingered with me for days, reshaping my understanding of all relationships in my life. I began practicing this new definition of love by encouraging Kevin's independence when he texted, occasionally offering emotional support and advice without financial bailouts. After 3 months of therapy, meditation, practice, and deliberate relationship building with friends, I found myself in a place I had never expected to reach genuine peace with my decision to establish boundaries with my family. The guilt had largely subsided, replaced by an understanding that true love sometimes requires difficult stands. "You've done remarkable work," Dr. Winters noted in what would be one of our final regular sessions. "How are you feeling about the possibility of eventual contact with your family?" "I'm open to it," I replied honestly. "But on new terms. I can't go back to being their ATM." Her smile conveyed understanding. "That's the difference between a boundary and a wall. A boundary has a gate that can open when conditions are right." As if the universe had been listening to our conversation, my phone buzzed with a text message as I left her office. It was from my mother. "Your father and I would like to talk. Thanksgiving is coming up. Will you join us?" After months of silence, the timing was almost eerie. Standing on the sidewalk outside my therapist's office, I felt a complex mix of hope and apprehension. Was this a genuine olive branch, or another manipulation attempt? There was only one way to find out. The invitation to Thanksgiving arrived via formal card in the mail a week after my mother's text, unusual for a family that typically communicated through hasty messages or last-minute phone calls. The cream-colored envelope contained a store-bought invitation with a handwritten note, "We miss you. Please come. Love, Mom and Dad." The formality suggested effort, perhaps even a recognition of the significance of this potential reconnection. Still, I approached it with cautious optimism rather than naive hope. "What are your thoughts about attending?" Dr. Winters asked during our session that week. "Part of me wants to go," I admitted. "They're still my family, but another part is afraid of walking straight back into the same dynamics. What would make it feel safer to attend?" I considered the question carefully. Clear boundaries established beforehand, a plan for how to respond if those boundaries are crossed. Maybe meeting on neutral ground first before the actual holiday. She nodded approvingly. "Those are excellent protective measures. Remember, reconciliation doesn't mean returning to the way things were. It means creating a new relationship with healthier patterns." Armed with this framework, I called my mother 3 days before Thanksgiving. The conversation began awkwardly with surface-level pleasantries that carefully avoided the months of silence and conflict. "Before I commit to Thanksgiving," I finally said, steering us to the necessary discussion, "I need to be clear about something. I'm happy to come and reconnect, but there can be no discussion of money. If that boundary is crossed, I'll leave immediately." My mother's pause stretched so long I wondered if the call had dropped. "Is that really necessary?" she finally asked, her voice tight. "Yes," I replied simply. "It's necessary for me." Another long pause. "Fine," she conceded. "No money talk on Thanksgiving." "Thank you," I said, genuinely appreciative of her agreement, however reluctant. "I'll be there at 2. Thanksgiving morning dawned cold and clear in Seattle. I spent the morning preparing the dish I had promised to bring: roasted Brussels sprouts with bacon and maple glaze, a recipe I had perfected during my months of rediscovering cooking as a hobby rather than a chore. As I drove the familiar route to my parents' house, memories surfaced with each landmark. The park where Dad taught me to throw a baseball, the convenience store where Mom would buy us ice cream after good report cards, the high school, where I had graduated as valedictorian with my entire family cheering. Despite these warm recollections, anxiety tightened my chest as I pulled into the driveway. My parents' modest one-story home looked the same as always, holiday decorations already adorning the front porch despite Thanksgiving not yet being over. My mother had always been eager to rush into Christmas. I was the last to arrive. My father answered the door, his expression a complicated mix of happiness and uncertainty. "Harley," he said awkwardly, extending his hand for a shake instead of the hug that would have been normal before our estrangement. I shifted my dish to one arm and shook his hand. "Hi, Dad. Happy Thanksgiving." Inside, the house smelled of roasting turkey and my mother's signature sage stuffing. Amanda sat on the couch with her boyfriend Dave, whom I had met only once before. She offered a curt nod but no verbal greeting. Kevin stood by the fireplace and gave me a subtle thumbs up of encouragement. My mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "You're here," she said, as if confirming a fact she had doubted. There was no hug, but her eyes lingered on me with what seemed like genuine emotion. "I brought Brussels sprouts," I said, holding up my dish. "You know your Uncle Stephen hates those," she replied automatically, then caught herself. "But thank you for bringing something." The awkward tension was mercifully interrupted by the arrival of my grandparents, followed quickly by my Aunt Judith, Uncle Stephen, and their 2 teenage children. The house filled with the buffer of extended family, diluting the intensity of immediate family dynamics. Dinner itself was a carefully choreographed dance of polite conversation. Weather, recent movies, my cousin's college applications, all safe topics that required no emotional vulnerability. My father made several attempts at normal interaction, asking about my work projects in a way that suggested genuine interest rather than financial calculation. "The new system we're developing will help emergency response teams coordinate during natural disasters." I explained, surprised, to find him asking follow-up questions rather than glazing over as he typically did during tech discussions. "That sounds important," he said. "You always were good at solving problems." The comment hung between us, loaded with unspoken meaning. I had indeed been the family problem solver, especially financial problems, for too long. As the meal progressed, I began to relax marginally. The boundary agreement seemed to be holding. No one had mentioned money loans, bills, or financial struggles. Maybe this was progress. Then came dessert. As my mother served pumpkin pie with whipped cream, she casually mentioned, "We're thinking of getting a new artificial Christmas tree this year. The old one is shedding like crazy." "The good ones are expensive," Amanda added, a familiar leading tone in her voice. "Like $300 for one that doesn't look cheap." "Christmas shopping in general is so stressful," my mother continued, "especially on a tight budget." I felt the familiar pressure building, the subtle hints that had previously been my cue to offer financial assistance. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. "Speaking of expensive things," Amanda said, turning to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "that's a nice new car in the driveway. Must be nice to afford such luxury items." And there it was, the boundary crossed through implication rather than direct request. "It's a Mazda, not a Mercedes," I replied evenly. "Reliable transportation." "Still," she persisted, "must have cost, what, $35,000? That's more than I make in a year." The table had gone quiet, all eyes moving between Amanda and me. My mother watched with poorly concealed anticipation while my father studied his pie with sudden intense interest. I placed my fork down carefully. We agreed no money discussions today. "I'm not discussing money," Amanda protested. "I'm just commenting on your fancy new car while the rest of us drive old clunkers." The familiar guilt trip strategy, transparent now that I had learned to recognize it. I pushed my chair back slightly, preparing to stand and leave as I had promised I would if boundaries were violated. "Amanda, that's enough," came an unexpected voice from the end of the table. My grandfather, my mother's father, spoke with quiet authority. At 82, he rarely inserted himself into family conflicts. All heads turned toward him in surprise. "I've sat by for years watching how you all treat Harley." He continued, his weathered hands folded calmly on the table. "I've never said anything because it wasn't my place, but I can't stay silent anymore." "Dad," my mother began, "you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," he interrupted gently. "I see history repeating itself. Your Aunt Mildred did the same thing to me. For decades expected me to fund her lifestyle because I had a good job while she made poor decisions. It nearly broke our relationship permanently." The revelation stunned the table into silence. I had never heard this family history before. "When I was Harley's age," my grandfather continued, "I finally had to tell Mildred no. She didn't speak to me for 2 years. It was painful but necessary. Eventually she learned to stand on her own feet, and our relationship became healthier than ever." My mother's face flushed red. "This is completely different." "Is it?" my grandfather asked. "You raised a hard-working, successful son. Instead of celebrating his achievements, you treat him like a personal bank. I've watched him give and give, while getting very little appreciation in return." The uncomfortable truth hung in the air. Amanda's boyfriend stared at his plate, clearly wishing to be anywhere else. My cousins exchanged wide-eyed glances. "We've sacrificed everything for our children," my mother said, voice rising defensively. "As parents should," my grandfather agreed, "without expectation of repayment. That's what love is." His words echoed what Dr. Winters had been helping me understand. Love without strings attached. Support without exploitation. My mother stood abruptly. "I don't need parenting lessons in my own home on Thanksgiving." She stormed into the kitchen, the swinging door closing behind her with a bang. My father looked torn, glancing between the kitchen door and me. Amanda seized the opportunity to follow our mother, throwing me a venomous look as she passed. Kevin remained seated, watching the drama unfold with a strange expression, part discomfort, part admiration. "I think I should go," I said quietly to no one in particular. My grandfather nodded in understanding. "Sometimes space is necessary, but remember, standing your ground isn't the same as giving up on family." I thanked him, said awkward goodbyes to the remaining relatives, and headed for the door. To my surprise, my father followed me out to the driveway. "Harley, wait," he called as I reached my car. I turned, keys in hand, bracing for whatever guilt trip or justification might follow. Instead, my father did something I couldn't remember him doing since I was a child. He apologized. "I'm sorry," he said, simply, hands shoved in his pockets like a schoolboy. "Your grandfather is right. We've taken advantage of your success instead of just being proud of you." The unexpected accountability left me momentarily speechless. "I can't speak for your mother or Amanda," he continued, "but I can tell you I'm ashamed of how we've treated you. I should have put a stop to it years ago." "Why didn't you?" I asked, the question I'd wondered for so long. He sighed heavily. "It was easier not to. Your mother has always worried about money even when we have enough. When you started doing well, it became a pattern I just went along with." He looked up at me directly. "That's no excuse. I failed you as a father by not protecting you from our expectations." The genuine remorse in his voice reached something deep inside me. "I don't mind helping family," I said carefully, "but there's a difference between occasional help and being treated like an ATM." He nodded slowly. "I understand that now. And I want you to know," he paused, seeming to search for the right words, "I want a relationship with my son that has nothing to do with his wallet. I miss knowing what's going on in your life." "I'd like that too, Dad." "It won't be fixed overnight," he acknowledged. "Your mother will take time to adjust. Amanda even longer. But if you can be patient with us trying to learn new patterns, I promise I'll do my part." As I drove away from my childhood home, I felt something I hadn't expected from this Thanksgiving visit: hope. Not naive optimism that everything would magically transform, but a measured hope that at least one family member understood the need for change. It wasn't total reconciliation, but it was a first step on what would clearly be a long road. As December arrived, bringing Seattle's characteristic gray skies and persistent drizzle, I reflected on how much had changed in just a few months. The anniversary dinner confrontation felt simultaneously like yesterday and a lifetime ago. After the tumultuous Thanksgiving, I decided that any further family interactions should occur on neutral ground. I texted my father suggesting we meet at Cornerstone Coffee, a shop equidistant between our homes. To my surprise, he agreed readily and asked if my mother could join. She won't talk about money, he promised. I've made that clear to her. The coffee shop meeting 3 days before Christmas was awkward but civil. My mother was subdued, lacking her usual domineering energy. My father carried most of the conversation, asking genuine questions about my work and life. For perhaps the first time in our adult relationship, we had a conversation that involved no financial undertones or subtle hints. As we were preparing to leave, my mother finally spoke directly to me. "Your father says I need to respect your boundaries." She said the words sounding rehearsed but sincere. I'm trying to understand that. It's difficult for me to change how I think about things. It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement, a small crack in the wall of denial that had characterized her response to my boundary setting. "I appreciate that, Mom," I replied. "Change is hard for all of us." We parted with tentative plans to speak again after the holidays. No grand reconciliation, no dramatic breakthrough, but a civil exchange that felt like solid ground to build upon. Christmas that year was unlike any in my adult life. Quiet, pressure-free, and celebrated with friends rather than family. Tyler and his wife hosted a gathering of holiday orphans people whose family situations made traditional celebrations complicated or impossible. Among them was Katie, a photographer I had met in my Saturday morning class, whose warm smile and easy conversation had been brightening my weekends for months. As winter turned to spring and spring to summer, my relationship with my family continued its slow, sometimes painful evolution. My father and I established a routine of meeting for breakfast every other Sunday, just the two of us, building a relationship based on genuine interest rather than financial obligation. He never asked for money, though he occasionally shared concerns about retirement or home repairs in a normal conversational way. My mother remained more distant, struggling to adapt to the new dynamic. There were setbacks, passive-aggressive comments at Easter dinner, a pointed Mother's Day card mentioning all she had sacrificed for her children, but also small victories like her genuine excitement when I was promoted to development team leader without a single mention of my increased salary. Amanda maintained her resentment the longest. At a family barbecue in July, however, she made a surprising confession after everyone else had gone inside. "I've been angry because you've succeeded where I haven't." She admitted the words clearly difficult for her. "It's easier to blame you for not sharing enough than to admit I've made poor choices." The honesty was unexpected and touching. "It's never too late to make different choices," I told her. "I've enrolled in community college again," she revealed. Business administration. For real this time. Kevin made the most dramatic changes. Taking inspiration from my boundary setting, he had moved out of our parents' house in February, found a steady job at a tech support company, and begun taking coding classes at night. We met regularly for dinner, our relationship evolving into a genuine friendship rather than the strained hierarchy of our earlier years. "You breaking the pattern gave me permission to change too," he explained over burgers one evening. "I watched how they treated you and realized I didn't want that for myself." By the anniversary of the restaurant incident, my parents' 31st anniversary, our family dynamic had transformed. Not perfectly, not completely, but significantly. My parents celebrated quietly at home this time, sending me a simple text with a photo of them toasting with wine glasses at their kitchen table. No invitation, no expectations, just sharing a moment. The most profound changes, however, were within me. Financial freedom brought a clarity I had never experienced before. Without the constant drain of family support, I was able to put a down payment on a small house in a quiet Seattle neighborhood. My relationship with Katie deepened into something serious and nurturing. My career flourished as my emotional energy was redirected from family crisis management to creative problem solving. That Thanksgiving 1 year after the tense confrontational holiday that had marked a turning point was the first family gathering that felt genuinely healthy. Hosted at my new home with clear expectations established beforehand, it passed without a single reference to financial matters. When Amanda admired a new piece of furniture, it was just admiration, not a hint. When Kevin mentioned struggling with his car insurance rate, he immediately followed with, "But I've been researching better options, not a request for assistance." The healing wasn't perfect or complete. There were still moments of tension, old patterns that occasionally resurfaced. But we were all trying some more successfully than others to build relationships based on genuine connection rather than transaction. Through therapy, reflection, and difficult conversations, I had learned lessons that transformed not just my family relationships, but my entire approach to life. The most painful boundaries are often the most necessary ones. Standing up to family was the hardest thing I had ever done, but also the most essential for my well-being and ultimately for healthier family relationships. True generosity comes from choice, not obligation. Now, when I help family, which I occasionally still do, it comes from a place of free choice rather than manipulation, making it genuine giving rather than extraction. Love that demands constant sacrifice isn't love at all. Real love builds others up toward independence and growth, not dependence and stagnation. External perspective is crucial when family dynamics become distorted. Without Tyler's friendship and Dr. Winter's professional guidance, I might never have recognized how abnormal my family's financial expectations were. Financial abuse is real and often unrecognized. Money can be a tool of control and manipulation, just as powerful as emotional or physical means, particularly within families where cultural expectations of support create fertile ground for exploitation. Forgiveness doesn't require forgetting or continuing unhealthy patterns. I found a way to forgive my family's past behavior without allowing it to continue unchecked. Setting boundaries is an act of love both for yourself and ultimately for the very people from whom you're establishing distance. My boundaries not only protected me, but eventually helped my family develop greater independence and self-reliance. The journey from financial exploitation to healthy family relationships wasn't quick or easy. It required courage to tear up that $1,500 bill strength, to withstand the emotional fallout, wisdom, to seek professional help, and patience, to allow new patterns to develop slowly. But standing on the other side now, I can say with certainty that it was worth every difficult moment. I reclaimed not just my financial autonomy, but my identity separate from my role as family provider. I discovered what genuine, non-transactional love feels like. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took advantage of your generosity? What helped you find the strength to stand up for yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life lessons about family finances and finding your own path. Remember, sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most meaningful growth. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to write your own life story rather than being a character in someone else's.